Hi, welcome to TCG Beaker. This is a weekly market series that I'm starting because I started tracking the Gundam TCG late November and noticed some interesting trends that I thought were worth sharing. I'll be going over how the overall Gundam market is probably crashing and why that's good, and I'll highlight the data from Newtype Rising, Dual Impact, and Edition Beta to give you a broad market overview. So what you're seeing is the dashboard that I created to help me see what's going on in the market. I started tracking in late November and I'm using data from today, December 23rd. And so I typically like to just look at the top 5 cards to give me a reference point. And these are the top 5 cards in terms of price. And it helps give me a reference point as to what is going on in the market. And so you'll notice that the top cards are typically always the alternative art cards. Right now, it seems as though the legendary rares have been going down in price. But you'll notice that there are 2 cards here in Newtype Rising, Overflowing Affection and Marita Cruz. Now, these are the alternative art cards that are going up in price. Now, when I take a look at a heat map that I created for Newtype Rising, you'll see as I scroll down, the majority of cards are actually in the red. There are some green, and that's to be expected. It's a general card population. But what we see here is that overall, the cards for Newtype Rising are going down in price, except maybe the more rare cards, right? The alternative arts, which are not super rare if you think about it. There's a lot of boxes that are printed of cards, but it's rare enough and there's enough demand that those prices are going up. And it seems to be that it's the cards that are used in actual gameplay versus more of a speculative collector purchase. And you'll see that with Overflowing Affection, Marita Cruz. Also, if I move over to Dual Impact now, you'll notice that the highest increase was Cubile at 30.3%. And likewise, just like in Newtype Rising, the legendary rare double pluses are going down in price, along with the single plus for legendary rare here, the Gundam Barbados First Form. When I look at the overall heat map of Dual Impact, it's the same story as Newtype Rising. All these cards are going down in value, and Dual Impact is actually more red than Newtype Rising, and that's probably because Bandai did announce that there was a second wave of printing coming out for Dual Impact, and that's starting to hit the market, and you're starting to see this impact. A falling market may seem bad because your card prices are going down, but it's actually a good thing because long term, you want your cards to be worth something. And the cards are only worth something if people want to play the game and if people want the cards. And this is actually reflected too, because if you actually look at the Gundam Aerial Rebuild in Newtype Rising, and this is TCG Player, you'll see that it follows the trend where it was really in demand as soon as it launched, and then over time it just goes down. People who wanted to buy it up front got it, and then you start going down in value because of more prints and more availability. However, for Overflowing Affection, you'll notice it kind of went down all the way, and this is the alternative art card, but it is kind of moving up. But you'll notice that as more supply comes in, price goes down. Now, when I looked at it, there is that bump that I'm catching in my data. So this is definitely something to look more towards for the next few weeks as I track it, and I'll keep you updated if I notice anything. Same with Marita Cruz. Goes up for a bit and then goes down, and then now it seems to have a bump, and that's probably based on the usefulness of the card. The LR double plus or Dual Impact, same story. Starts a little high, but then goes all the way down. Cubile, this one's more interesting for Dual Impact, and this one did register the 30% increase from what I saw. Amon Karn is the Link pilot, and this card is also seeing a resurgence during this time. Okay, not as high as Cubile. When you actually look at the data though, so now I'm gonna flip over to Edition Beta. You'll see that this looks all green, and it's kind of really deceptive, and so I wanted to go into that a little bit, kind of like a buyer beware moment. So if I look at the top 5 cards, it's all increasing. If I look at the heat map for edition beta, when I scroll down, you'll notice there's some green, but there's a lot more red. Overall, cards are going down in price for Gundam. Edition beta is unique because these cards are out of print. They will not print more of these beta cards anymore. However, what you'll notice is that the cards in edition beta are all in Newtype Rising as well. Newtype Rising is actually a larger set. And so the beta edition is kind of a small set of cards that were printed for people to test out the game, but they're no longer in print. But all the cards that are in edition beta are in Newtype Rising. Point in case here is if I look at the beta edition of Overflowing Affection, you'll see that the pattern is when beta came out, it was in demand and went up. Then Newtype Rising, the moment it came out, this price dropped like crazy. Now, this is important because when I look at Newtype Rising, when Newtype Rising came out, the price of this went way down, way more supply, and it's slowly going up now. Probably because it's part of the meta decks that are out there where Overflowing Affection is really, really powerful. When I look at the overall market for edition beta, this is what I'm seeing. Gundam trading card game prices are going down. So what's happening is people are finding out where the card is the cheapest, whether it's the beta version or the Newtype Rising version, and they're buying it. And so that's really what you're seeing right now. The majority of people, if they're going to buy to collect, then they're holding it. But if they're speculating, then what they're going to speculate on are these cards, okay? The top cards in edition beta, which are the alternative arts. And this is the buyer beware moment. Is that if you're going to look at these prices, you have to beware because there's so little liquidity, meaning there's so few cards out there that's really hard to even get a right bearing as to whether or not this is really worth $3,500 because there's only few on here and there's only been 27 sold based on this data. A good example of this is Gundam GD01 for the edition beta, right? This is the legendary Rare Plus. Right now it's sitting at 1900 for a single card at market price. But what's interesting is if you look at the data, it was low for a while and then all of a sudden it started spiking. This particular section here in the early December, somebody bought all 4 copies that were available at the lower price point. And what happens is now there's only 3 cards available for purchase, the lowest one being 1900. Dashboard. I see in my heat map, the Gundam Legendary Rare Plus was definitely going up in price. I see that. But it's really deceptive because if I just base it off of those cards, the top 10 cards, I would see, oh yeah, all the alternative arts, the majority of them are either keeping their value or increasing in value. But when I look at the rest of the cards here, I find that they're going down. That's because people are trying to figure out, how do I get the card I want to play and where is it cheaper? If it's the beta version, I'll buy the beta version. If it's the Newtype Rising version, I'll buy the Newtype Rising version. Really, 2 takeaways. First one is, the Gundam trading card game prices are going down. It will probably stay down for a while just because there's so much new supply coming on. And that's a good thing because you want more players. More players is a healthy game, and that means more demand. And that means that as players are able to get the cards they want, to build the decks they want, to play the decks they want, more and more players will play. Okay? And that's really up to Bandai as well, just to help make the game interesting, to really help foster a good community. That's beyond just looking at the data here. The second takeaway is that based on the edition beta, it doesn't seem as though being out of print is really a factor right now. The only way it becomes a factor in terms of price is if you're going for these alternative arts, because there's no more prints of edition beta left. It's only whatever is out there for boxes that people buy, but there is a caveat. If you decide to purchase these things in hopes of it increasing in value, you have to realize that there has to be somebody else that wants to buy it. Gundam card game is not as popular in the future, then that's not going to be a good thing. Then it's going to be really hard to sell that card for a profit. And so if you are a collector, it's good for you. You're able to purchase things and just hold on to it. If you're speculating for a short-term gain, this may not be the market for you, and you're probably better off doing something else that will give you a bigger gain or a more surefire gain. because the Gundam card game, based on what I'm seeing, it's really in the players' hands right now, and it's for the players, and that's what Bandai's aiming for. More supply to get cards into players' hands so they can play the game and grow from there. Anyhow, that's what I'm seeing in the data. Hopefully that was helpful. More updates in the future.